Well, welcome to Modeling Time with me, Brian Banna. And before I get started, I want to say happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there. And if you're traveling over this holiday week or weekend, please be safe and return home safely. So, what I've got going here today, or in this episode, is getting the electronics done in these F units. On my desk right now is a complete mess. I've got two of the units done and I just have to do the B unit. So it might be a long video depending on how I do this, but I want to show all the steps. So I've done a couple of things already to the frame and installing a couple of parts, but I had to do that before I could do this video because they needed to be glued in and I needed to let the glue set and stuff. So let me get the camera set up and I'll go over all that's happening with installing the motor, which is pretty basic, all the sound boards and speakers and getting everything wired up. So let me get the camera set up and we'll get right to it. All right, so this is the B unit frame. I've got the camera zoomed out so hopefully we can see everything that's going on here. And hopefully the lighting will be good for all of this. Here, I got the light down a little bit further. Now, you'll notice, let me show you this first. So this is a frame completely set up here. So I've got the trucks installed, the motor's in, the boards are in, and everything's all wired up. You can see everything is in there nicely. Now, if I decide to use the Stewart shell, I'm going to have to clip these leads down a little bit because they interfere with the roof, just a little bit. So I'll probably go and clip those off. If I use a highliner shell, then I don't have to necessarily clip those off. Now what I could do on the inside of the Stewart shell is interferes about right in the middle here. So what I could do is I could just cut a channel across there, which I might do anyway. Because I think I'm going to use a Stewart shell, and when I get to working on the shell part, which will start in the next video, I'll explain why I'll probably use the Stewart shell. But I got to do a little bit of investigation, but there's a specific reason why I'll probably use the Stewart shell over the highliner shell because of a specific detail that's kind of off on the highliner shell when using the Stewart chassis. But I'll go over all that later. So this is basically what the end result is going to be. I got a piece of dog hair right there. So let me put this aside. And you'll notice the trucks are no longer weathered. I'm not doing weathering anymore. I just like the look of a fresh model. And I mean, I love the look of weathering. I think it looks great. And I'm going to piss and moan here for a second. I don't like doing it. So I'm not going to be doing it anymore. All my models will be unweathered and just a nice satin varnish on them and such. I like that look. So anyway, let's get back to this. All right, so what I've got here, now this is the B unit frame. The B unit frame in a Stewart model looks exactly like an A unit frame. What you're going to notice here is you see all this metal here on this A unit frame? Well, I cut it off on the B unit. Now the reason I had done that is because this was the first unit I was starting on, and I was going to use a big speaker back here. So I cut all this off to make room for the speaker to fit in, and to fit this whole area. Well, it didn't sound really good. The larger speaker didn't sound good. I probably didn't have the right chamber with it and all that. So I'll be using my smaller speakers like I'm used on the other two units, this speaker, and it will just sit right like that, like it does on the other models. Which is okay. It's fine. These speakers, this enclosure with the speakers I have, sound really, really nice. The speakers are still in the box over here. I should have everything out on the table that I need. So anyway, so to start with, on the normal frame, I had just cut an area out just enough so that that speaker could slide in, and it fits in really, really nice, as you can see. on this one here. You see how the speaker fits in very, very nicely. It's all bolted in and everything works really good. Okay, now get that back on the track. Okay, so the next thing I did was I used a ball end mill and I cut a cavity out in the bottom of the frame for the ESU power pack, the Loc Sound power pack. So that's glued in place there. I drilled a hole through the frame so that the wires come up on the side like that. Now the other part of the power pack, the board, is right here. Now this is C8 in place. Now there is no metal to metal contact. On the shelf there's a piece of styrene, and on the vertical side on the inside here there's a piece of styrene. So there is no metal to metal contact there. This is C8 in place, so if anything ever happened I could just snap it off. This, the capacitor, is Gorilla Glued in place, so that's probably never coming out. And some people may be cringing at that, but it's okay. I'm not concerned about it. So we've got that all set up, and that'll go into place real nicely, and everything fits like really snug in there very nicely. So the next step that we have to do is I have to get the motor set up. Now what do I mean by getting the motor set up? Well, I need to solder wires to these pickups, and I need to cut these standoffs down. So the first thing I do is I gotta figure out which way is forward, because this dot here on the Kato motor is top and forward, of course. So, and also what we need to do, I need to put my OptiVisors on here a second, is I need to find out which one is the negative lead. Now, to do that on a Kato motor, you're not going to be able to see this, but where these bushings are here and on the bottom, one of them on the face, right on the face of the motor here, there is an N. So that's going to be your negative lead. So that's where your black wire is going to go. So that is on the top. So the red wire is going to be on the bottom. Now, if you look at the orientation here, this is the front of the motor, because I got the dot here on the front. And I've got all these wires coming up on this side, and I got the power pack board on this side. So I want my wires on the motor to come up this side. So what I want to do is I want to spin this bottom one. I want them to both come up on the same side as the negative on the top here. So I'm going to take some nippers here, because I'm going to be soldering wires to these. Spin this sideways, and I'm going to cut this one off just a little bit there. So I got a little lead there. Now, excuse me, I need to spin this one around to the other side. So I'm going to turn that upside down. I'm going to take this, and I'm just going to spin it around. Just like that. And I'm going to now nip that one off also. There we go. So that's the bottom now. So now both wires are coming up on this side. Anyway, so now what I want to do is I want to take this red wire from the bottom. I want to pass it through the frame to come out the top, and that'll capture the wire so it's not in your way when you're trying to put the motor in and all that stuff. So what I want to do here is I'm going to drill a hole through this portion of the plastic part of the motor, through this portion of the plastic part, and through this portion of the plastic part. Now what that'll entail is I'll go in perpendicular to this circular area, like towards the center, and as I'm drilling, I'll rotate the drill bit and then go straight up. So I'm going to take that off camera because I have to hold it in different angles and stuff, and you won't be able to see it. But when I'm done, you'll see the holes will go straight up through there. All right. So now, get this in focus. you can see I've got hole drilled there, through there, and through there. So now when I solder the wire to this pickup, I can pass it through the frame here. Now the diameter drill bit just has to be larger than the diameter of your wire that you're using. I use like a 40 thousandths drill bit because the wire is a 30 gauge, which is about 30 thousandths. I think. I know that. So it'll pass through there very nicely. Now the next step is to cut these posts down. Now what I've done is I've made a tool that fits over those posts snugly and around the motor so it holds everything in alignment with each other just like that. And then I will take a sharp knife. Now what I want to add before I go and do this, drilling the holes, you want to use a nice like new sharp drill bit because this plastic or Delrin is really tough to drill through. So anyway, so I've got the tool over the motor, and now I'm just going to cut these standoffs off. Now, excuse me, I don't want to cut all the way down first because what that does is that when you start cutting way at the base down here, it stretches the plastic so it pulls the post up a little bit as you're cutting. Then when you're done cutting, it'll settle back down below this level. So what I want to do is I want to cut above it first. Like that. And then a little bit more. Then I want to take the knife right along the top of the tool and just slice it. Just like that. And then we'll go do the other side. Now, you'll notice I'm slicing towards my fingers. If you're going to do that, have lots of control over this knife so it doesn't slip. See if I can cut myself. Cutting a little bit more. Now I can go down to the surface. Just like that. So now it's nice and level across there. I can take this tool off. And now I can solder the wires onto the leads. So let me go ahead and get this wires soldered on here. Everybody knows how to solder wires. If you don't, first thing you do is you tin the ends. Then you solder the wires to the pickups. So let me go ahead and get that done. I'll pass the wire through here and then we'll get moving along with getting this motor set up. You know, I thought maybe it'd be a good idea to show the soldering for those that are not comfortable with soldering, and show you how, how I do it and all that stuff. I'm using, for the motor wire, I'm using this Miniatronics number 30 gauge stranded ultra flexible wire in black and red. So red is going to the bottom. So we got the dot on the motor, which is the top. So we're going to do the red on the bottom here. So I'm going to use my sprue cutters. I'm going to strip some wire off here. Spin it. Put some flux on it. I got my solder here. Got my soldering iron over here. Now, before you use your soldering iron, wipe it off on your sponge. Get it all cleaned off. Put some solder on it. And just tin the ends of the wire. Now, I'm going to pass this wire through the holes that I drilled. And put these locks that way. Use my little vise here. Put the motor into it so it's a nice heavy object holding the motor. Like that. Pull this wire up through a little bit more. There we go. Hopefully this is all on camera. There we go. Let me zoom in a little bit. Alright, so I'm going to take some flux here. Put some on the wire. Put some on the lead, the brush. I need to nip off just a little bit. There we go. Get some solder on here. And just solder this wire. Just like that. Now we'll pull this wire through. Can spin this around because that's on the bottom. And now we'll do the black wire. Do the same thing on the black wire. Strip the end. Let me get that goo out of there. Spin it. Put some flux on it. Clean the tip of my soldering iron. Get some solder. Tin it. Put some flux on the wire. On the brush. That's it. Now you'll notice I've left a lot of wire on here. I don't need that much. So what we're going to do, and go ahead and put this motor into the model. Actually, not yet. What I need to do, now this this is the board that I designed to mount the buddy board onto. So the buddy board's going to go right up on there. I've got slots or notches cut out on both sides, and that allows wires to come up around it. So this, and on the other side you'll see there's cavities here that fit perfectly over the motor mounts. So let me wide angle that again. So that goes there and there. And then the screws that came originally with the Kato. Well, now this is a Stewart Kato, so that's why I say Kato. Now I can screw those down. Sorry, my hand's in the way. There we go. So now I've got the buddy board mount on, and the wires will pass right up through that cavity there. So I think, yeah, those are threaded. These through holes here, when I design this, they're not threaded, but before I paint it and everything, I thread them. So now we got to get these wires out of the way and drop that down in there, except this wire got in the way. There we go. And there we go there. The motor is there. Now what we can do, screws, the motor mount screws. So I can take these. Well, actually, you know what? Before we do that, let me take this motor out. Before we do that, let's get the buddy board on. So that's the front of the motor. So I put the decoder in the back. So the buddy board just fits right over those tabs. I need to take this adapter board off. Put these screws in. Now the easy way to put the screws in is just hold it with the tweezers, hold it over the hole, and put the 080 screws in there. So let me get these screwed down, then we'll go move on to the next. Alright, so as you can see, the motor's all set up. Got the wires all soldered in place, red to the front, black to the rear. Now, when I go program this, I may have to swap those two wires depending on which way which way it goes when I power it up and set the direction. So, of course, I want all my directions to be the same, so I may have to swap those two. So that's all set up. Now what I need to do is I need to solder the capacitor wires to the power pack board. And the way that goes is the red goes to the square pad, and let me zoom in on this a little bit. Okay, on here you've got a round pad and you got a square pad. Now before I took this board apart, took the capacitor off the board, I noted which lead off the capacitor went to which pad on the board. So in my case, the red wire goes to the square pad and the black wire goes to the round pad. So I'm just going to go ahead and solder those in place. So I'll do the bottom one first, the round one first. Let me get that through the hole there. What I'll do is I'll solder it from the inside here. So let me get some flux on there. Get that on there like that. Get some solder on there. And get it soldered up. Now I'll go in and, where's my clippers, and I'll nip that wire down. There we go. And now let's do the red wire to the other pad. Get some flux on there. Some solder on there. Cut that, get that wire out of there, and then do what I do here with the lacquer thinner and clean those pads off. There we go. All right. I just need to go down there and see if I can clip that black wire a little bit better. There we go. Okay. Now, with those wires in there, I can install the motor. Alright, I'll just take the motor mount screws in there. And one there. Okay, so the motor is in. I've got the power pack board wired up, and I can, if I want to now, sorry about that, clip on the fuel tank. There we go. Now you'll notice on the fuel tank I bought some, see if you can see this over here. There we go. I bought the high-tech brackets, so I glued those to the front of the fuel tank there, and also to the back of the fuel tank, just to give a little detail. You won't see them really, but it helps fill in that area. All right, the next job is to solder these power pack wires to the buddy board. Now I've got my little pad here. This is what the buddy board comes in. So you've got this W here, which is, let me get a pointer out here, here we go, which is this pad right here that has a W next to it. Let me zoom in on that. There we go. Let me get that. Okay, so if we hold this way, well actually, doesn't matter, put it right there. Let me zoom out a little bit. Okay, so we've got this pad with a W next to it, which is this pad here with the W next to it. So then it goes white wire, red wire, and black wire to ground. So this is your white wire, your power, and your ground. So let's get that taken care of. I don't trim these wires at all. I like to leave, I used to trim everything up really close, but I like to leave everything fairly long now in case you have to do some work in here. So let's go with the white wire. That's going to be the first one. Alright, so I'm going to nip that just a little bit shorter. I'm going to bend it at a 90. I'm going to put some flux on it. And solder it. There's one. The next wire is the red wire, the power wire. So we're going to nip that slightly shorter. Put a little bit of a 90 on there. Well, not a little bit of a 90, but bend it at almost 90. Put some flux on there. some solder going. There we go. And then the black wire. Trim that a little bit. Put some flux on there. Get some solder. And that takes care of soldering the power pack on. And of course I want to clean those pads off with some lacquer thinner. Okay, so that takes care of the power pack and getting the motor hooked up to the board. So right now, that's what we got going. So let me get set up for the next task, and we'll go through that. All right, so the next step I didn't feel was really necessary to document. It was just installing the trucks and getting the sanding lines into the holes and trimming the sanding lines to length and getting them in their holes. So that's what the frame looks like with the trucks installed. And then, of course, soldering the wires to the necessary, I'm sorry, to the appropriate pads on the buddy board. But what I didn't do, I didn't clean off the pads after solder. So let me do that real quick. And then we'll move to the next step, which will be the speakers. So let's get that going. So on the decoder itself, we don't need these speaker wires because the buddy board has the speaker wire or the speakers already wired up. So we'll take that one off, and we'll take that one off. And we will be reusing those. And here's another piece from another one. So I'll put that aside, and we'll get this. Actually, we got the enclosure. This is an enclosure that I designed earlier this year, I think it was, or maybe it was late last year. I can't remember when, but it really sounds good. I really like this. I kind of stumbled onto it, and I think I talked about it in a earlier video. Let me get my speakers out. Now I am trying different speakers out. They are tube speakers, and they got a metal diaphragm on them. These have a higher hertz rating. So, and they do sound good. They sound really, really good. And I like them a lot. So, first thing I want to do, there's the solder pads on the back. You see the silver spots there. Is just make sure they fit properly into their spots. Like that. So now that I know that they fit properly, I'm going to glue them in with some CA. So let me get some CA out here. I got a little piece of tape over here, and it's not necessary to show that. It's just a piece of tape with some CA on it. So I want to make sure I glue the solder pads up. So let's get this sealed in all the way around. Put glue all the way around the frame. There we go. And now I'll push it up against the top ledge. Push it down in there. There we go. That one's glued in. Now let's do the other one. Do the same thing. Get glue all the way around this frame. And these really do sound good. Alright, now you're probably thinking, remember, you have to make sure you solder the pads properly if you're using two speakers. Well, that's easy to do because on this speaker there's some writing or a stamp here on this one and same spot here on this one. So it says LF19E. So this is the L side. So I want to do that same one on this side. That's how I know. So first thing we want to do is get these with wires. Oh no, first thing we want to do now, what I do is I have this how did that happen? Well, anyway, oh, it fell over it again. That's right. I had taped this down, and this tape is really delicate to other tape, so it doesn't matter. So I bought this copper foil tape, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a piece of tape or two pieces of tape across the top there. Everything has to fall out of my hands. There we go. Then I take a piece of, or not a piece, but a Q-tip, and I just burnish it down. This stuff is really sticky. Now it's double-sided use. I mean, you can put it on something and it's conductive on the tape side as well. There's that. Pull these edges up and just slice them off on the ends. And there's one side. And now let me do the other side. There we go. Yeah, this stuff really does stick good. Alright, there's my solder pads. So, let me get everything set up for the putting the wires on, and we'll get those all soldered in. So, that's my solder pad. So, one set of wires from each side will go to one, and then of course the others will go to the other side. Alright, so with the tape in place, it's time to solder these pads. So I need to solder to this pad and to this pad. So using the wire that I took off of the decoder, I'm just going to strip it a little bit. Twist it. Put some flux on it. And tin it. Now we can take some more flux out of here. We'll go to this pad first. Boop. There we go. It's the first time that's happened. Alright, now we're going to take this one right over to here. And that's that. You take some lacquer thinner, clean that up. There we go. So there's that one. Now, that one is on the L side of the part number. So I need to take this one, this pad, to that same strip. So we're going to take another piece of speaker wire, strip it, twist it, tin it, and we're going to put it on that pad. See if I can get it without the magnet sticking to the soldering iron. There we go. That was a good shot. Clean it. Now we're going to take it. And we're going to put it there. Clean that up. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for this solder pad. All right, so there's the speaker unit all set up and wired. Now we can attach it to gotta get these wires underneath the speaker and in their grooves. There we go. Keep them away from the flywheel. And then I just need to put the screws in. Gotta get that wire underneath it. I gotta see where these wires are. There we go. Now they're where they're supposed to be. All right. So these wires are all everything rotates good. Flywheels are clear. And now I need to get the speaker wire onto the buddy board and the speaker. So let's do the buddy board first. So once I get this on, excuse me, everything will be done and I can program it. All right. There's one wire, and that is going to go to there. There we go. Just like that. All right, those ones are cleaned up. Let's get the last wire in. All right, one more solder. All right, that takes care of all of the wiring, of course, except for the rear light and the front light. But for the board, I can go now and put this on the program track and get it programmed. So let me go ahead and get that all set up, and then we'll get back and I will start up all three of them and have them running all three together. Now, the volume's going to be loud because I haven't fine-tuned it. I do that when I'm done with the whole model. I mean, after all the painting, decaling, everything. So the sound will be a little loud, but that's okay. Okay, so they're all the electronics are in, and they're all programmed. So this one's 301, 305, and 310. So this is the B unit. So let me go ahead and put the B unit on, and or one of the A units, doesn't really matter. They all sound the same, and they're all programmed with the same sound file. I just changed the sound speed in 305 to go up 3 notches and down 3 notches for 301, and left 310 standard or whatever the default was. And that's hoping that it'll keep the motor sounds from syncing, so they have, a little slight difference in the motor sounds. So let me go ahead and get the camera set up and everything on the track, and then we'll just start them up. I'm going to put the camera a little bit further away because they are kind of loud right now. But like I said, when I'm all done with building the models, then I'll fine-tune the volumes and the speeds and stuff like that so that they match perfectly. Okay, so I've got 305 on the test track. That's A unit. So let's give it the start up. Go. All right, so that takes care of putting all of the electronics into the three phase 1 F3 F units. The next step for me on these right now is just a really easy one, and that's just to put these draft gearboxes in. Get them grit blasted, get them painted, and get them installed. No big deal on that. Nothing to really show. After that, it's time to start working on the hoods. So at that point, I'm going to discuss the pros and cons of the using the Stewart hoods, the Stewart Cotto hoods, or using the Highliner hoods. So until then, I hope you enjoyed that. Maybe you got something out of it. For those of you that are a little timid about soldering and stuff, you can see how really easy it is. And in closing, again, I'd like to say Happy Thanksgiving to all of you, and thank you for watching.